Hi, welcome to my video. So in this video, you're going to be seeing me using Windows 11 Professional here. Let's just pop in a NeoFetch, Windows 11. Doesn't say Professional though. Let's type in Fast Fetch there. Okay, this says Windows 11 Professional. Shows the kernel. It's on 23H2. So using Windows PowerShell, desktop environments, Fluent, desktop Window Manager. So, anyways, why am I using Windows? I thought I was a Linux user. Well, I'm, I've been on Windows, been a Mac OS, and a Linux user for pretty much all my life, except for Linux was something I've been using for the last 25 years. And well, I used Mac off and on in the 90s and 80s. I didn't use it hardcore, but for the most part, I use Windows a lot. Windows is probably the most I use overall systems out there. Now, I'm getting really fed up with Linux. I'm fed up with Wayland, fed up with the desktop environments. Neither is GNOME. GNOME works good, but it's missing a lot of features. KDE has all the features. It's really buggy. XFCE4 is great, but it's no Wayland support, and it's just it's like that. That's Linux. Like that's just a that little example right there is basically all across everything with Linux. Like people like, oh, I have problems with Wayland, so I'm going to use a 40-year-old code that's called X11, which is probably not maintained anymore, and it probably has a lot of vulnerabilities, and people don't even realize that it's very insecure to use it. But I'm sure a lot of will argue against me and say that it's still being maintained. Well, I don't know, man. I don't know. But what I'm going to say is that I know Windows is maintained and developed by very well paid developers, same as Mac OS. So you're going to have a very good solid system with a lot of support. Linux could have this if they would put their money into the developers, but they don't. They put a lot of money into other crap like DEI, for example, which should not be anything related to Linux at all. Politics should stay away from Linux. And that's another reason why I don't like Linux. All these new younger generation going into Linux is making me having bad taste with Linux. I used to like Linux, but I think in the new generation of Linux users, it's not my kind of people. Not to judge you guys, but there's a lot of um, I don't know. It's very different, and the Linux system it's in a very it's in a very vulnerable state right now, literally from security wise to just everything about it. It's not looking too good with Linux at all. And I still use it because I have no choice to use it on my Dell computer because it does not support Windows 11. But I really would like to get Mac OS working on there, like a Hackintosh, open core Hackintosh system. I've been trying to get it working, but I almost had it working, but I'll figure it out, right? I think. I hope. I would love to use FreeBSD, and I could use FreeBSD, but the downfall of FreeBSD is that it does not have native support for Steam and no native support for Discord. And I know you can get it all working in ways if you want to get it working. You can probably get it working, but I'm talking about native support, like just install from the FreeBSD package manager and working out of the box. Install it, launch it, works like how you do it in Linux. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So um, I do like FreeBSD a lot. It's one of my favorite systems. BSD in general, I like BSD systems. That's why I like Mac OS because it's based on BSD a lot as well. But I think Mac OS is an overall nice desktop. It's just a very nice system in total. I really, really like Mac OS desktop. and I like the shell part of it too. I like Darwin. I like BSD. I think overall it's a good system. I do have a computer that supports the latest Mac OS, but I don't use it because it's a computer with not too much memory, and it's a computer also with very small disk space. The reason why I want to get it on my Dell because my Dell has 32 gigs of memory, and it also has 3 hard drives that are a terabyte each. So it just has more storage on it compared to my Mac Mini. I could use a USB, you know, enclosure for storage, but I don't know. It's just I want to do a hackathon. I think they're fun to play around with. Just getting it to work, just tweaking about. It's fun. I like doing it. I've been doing hackathons for many years. Um, I do like Linux. I've been using it for 25 years, but I'm to the point where I'm really fed up with Linux. I am. I've been fed up for a long while. And if I'm going to Windows and using Windows, there's a clearly a good reason why I'm going to Windows, and I feel good too. Like I actually like very happy to be back on Windows. I never left Windows really, but I'm just happy to use it more because I used to use Linux a lot. Like I use it main Linux, and I'm all for Linux. When things are going good at Linux, I will brag the crap out of it. I will say good things about it. I will be the most positive person when it comes to talking about Linux. But I'm gonna be straight up with you guys. Like, even though I try to cope a lot, I try to like do my best to like give like say good things about Linux. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I haven't been happy with Linux for the past maybe 4 years. To be really fairly honest, like especially with NVIDIA GPUs, with the NVIDIA graphic drivers, with Wayland, been bugging me for a long time. And that's the reason why I used AMD GPUs on it. But it's money, costing money, to buy hardware that works on Linux when I could just use my NVIDIA card that works on Windows perfectly and just leave Windows on it. It would save me a couple of $100 to be honest. I don't have to buy it. Like I have all these graphic cards. Like I don't even use them. I just have them in a box, and I I buy so much hardware to get Linux to work properly with my system, and like Linux has good support for a lot of things, but when it comes to GPUs, it doesn't. And GPUs do not come cheap. Even if you buy mid-range GPUs, they're not that cheap. Especially if you're living alone, supporting yourself by yourself, trying to live, and then buying these graphic cards, and you're wasting money if you're not using them. So you're basically just taking money and you're basically just, you know what I mean? I could sell them, but I don't like to sell things. But anyways, my point is that I'm really tired of just Linux, tired of lack of hardware support. I put Windows back on this computer because the USB Bluetooth that I have doesn't want to work on NixOS. I tried everything to get it working. I could probably get it working, maybe. But I just like I'm tired of tinkering. I'm tired to always troubleshooting something, and it's not like once in a while I gotta do this. It's like constantly all the time. Like when I put new hardware to it, if it won't always work out of the box. For the most part, it does, but sometimes, like that USB adapter I got for Bluetooth, does not work at all with Linux. Um, I tried it on my Dell computer; it didn't want to work. So it works on Windows, but it does not work on Linux. So I wouldn't be able to use. Well, I could use this headset because this headset does have a wire. It can be used as a wire headset because it does have a cable for the wiring part. It could also be used as a wireless device because it does have a wireless receiver. But I prefer to use Bluetooth, and that's what I use this headset with because it just works really good with Bluetooth. And yeah, um, I like Windows. I think Windows work really well. I know people they they complain about Windows a lot. I'm one of them too. Like I don't always say good things about Windows, but I don't always say good things about Linux, and I don't always say good things about Mac OS either. But there's not much I can say bad about Mac OS because there's a lot of good things to the system. Probably the only thing I don't like about Mac OS is using an Apple ID to log into it. There's probably ways that you don't have to use that at all, but that's probably my only main reason I don't like Mac OS in that regards. But other than that, I think overall it's a good system. Like even their web browser Safari is pretty good. I don't have anything really bad to say about macOS. Like the programs that they use, it works really well. Especially if you have like, I do have an iPhone, I do have an Apple Watch. I mean, I could be in the whole ecosystem, but I do prefer Android mobile. That's what I use. I love my Pixel 8a. It's a good device. I do have an Apple Apple iPhone 14, what it's called. I don't use it, but I have one. And I keep it on because I need to use that phone to update my Apple Watch. Even though my Apple Watch does not work with my Pixel phone, it's still a watch. So I use it as a watch, and it still tracks my steps and all the other stuff. So I mean, it's still usable. It's just not fully usable like if I would have my iPhone. But then again, I kind of like that because I don't like these things to be. I like to be like I like the integration, but I kind of like things to be a little bit separated as well. So I kind of like the watch the way it is because it doesn't work with my Android. So I use it mostly just as a. I use it for a watch for mainly. Uh, just look at the time. That's what people would buy it for is a watch because that's what it is. And that's what I use it mainly for. Overpriced watches to say. I could have just bought a Timex and be done with it, right? But anyways, um, so yes, I prefer Mac OS. I like Darwin. I think the BSD system is great. Um, I'm just really tired of Linux. Like 25 years, and just it having like a vulnerability attacks. With like what happened in March or just this year, Linux has been exploited a few times, and I don't know. I think it's gonna have more vulnerabilities. I think Linux needs a better development team. I think developers needs to be paid better because I think a lot of developers are burn out and also giving up because they don't get paid at all or paid not too good. And a lot of good talented developers are just going into companies where they'll get paid good and appreciated better. You know what I mean? Like Microsoft or Apple. And I don't blame them either because I think that if you want to work on Linux, they should be paid pretty good. Just because it's open source software doesn't mean that they should not get paid to do open source software. I think you want good desktop environments, good Windows stack, like a good display server stack, window and server stack. You need, a team where they can do good, like, UX and UI, because Linux is lacking of desktop. I know we have all these desktop environments, all these Windows managers, but none of them, I would say, is better than Windows desktop. None of them is better than Mac OS desktop. These two desktops actually are better than Linux could ever provide us. There's no good desktop environment in Linux. I'm not happy with any of them. Either they have all the features that I need, or maybe too much features and it's very buggy, or it has less features, it's very stable. It doesn't have Windows stableness with all the features you want. It doesn't have the Mac OS stableness with all the features you want. Plus, on top with Mac OS, you have a native BSD Unix shell. And with Linux, you have with Windows, you have a Linux subsystem. So I mean, it's not totally native, but it's very well usable on Linux if you want on Windows if you want to use Linux. Linux is very well usable with inside the Windows system. If you really want to use Linux stuff, you can use Linux stuff inside Windows. The subsystem is actually pretty good, but I don't really use it because I don't really care for it. PowerShell is good enough for me for Windows. I don't really need to have a WSL2 install. If I don't, I just don't really care about Linux anymore. I'm kind of really fed up with it. Until I see a lot of improvement with Linux when it comes to the desktop, then I probably try it back. I still use Linux on my Dell computer, but I really want to get onto Mac OS. Like I would love to get a Hackintosh working on that Dell computer because I prefer to use Mac OS on that computer. That would be a good desktop for that computer. I mean, I would really like to get that going. I would actually like to have Windows working, to be honest, but it's not supported, and I do have some problems when I run Windows 11. Even though I can get it to work on the Dell computer, but it's not supported by Windows 11, so there is some problems with it. I mean, I have some problems. I mean, it works good for overall things, but when it comes to starting up the machine, it just always blanks out my startup. I can't see anything, and it doesn't do that with Linux or I don't know, it just doesn't do that with Linux, or it doesn't do that with FreeBSD or BSD systems in general, or Mac OS if it works. So it does this with Windows. Some reason it does this, and I don't like it. It doesn't do that with my ASUS computers. Windows don't do it. They don't blank out. You can see the everything on the display. It could also be the GPU. I use a discrete GPU, and I also use a TV as well. So it could be a combination of those things as well. But it's just I don't find Windows works as it should on the computer device, and is also not supported for that CPU. So I just rather not use it. I want to use an operating system that supports the system itself, right? I don't want to use Windows and say like, and then it says that your CPU is not supported for Windows 11. So it makes me feel kind of like I shouldn't be using the system, even though it works fine. But anyway, that's Microsoft's fault, not my fault. So that's not really cool of them. But yeah, this headset's it works really well, and I'm not even sure if it works on Linux. I hadn't tried on Linux yet, but it works pretty good in this system here. And yeah, and I'm happy to be back on Linux. And all the open source software that I use on Linux, I can use on Windows. Windows has a lot of good support. I mean, it's really well done. It's really good, actually. Anyways, guys, that's just my little rant. So my future videos, I'll probably doing some videos on some Hackintosh and get back into my roots. Cause I used to do a lot of Hackintosh videos. I used to do a lot of. I used to be a home brewer, man, for Hackintosh. I used to be in the Hackintosh scene for a long time, but I kind of stopped using it. But I want to get back into Hackintosh. I think Hackintosh is pretty fun. So I want to just take Linux, give it a break. Let's see if it improves over time. But I use Linux too much. I use it a lot. I use it way too much, and more than an average user would use it. I really need to take a break from it. I've been using it for 25 years, and I've been hardcore with Linux. I mean, like I use a lot of other systems, but I use Linux a lot. I use it like I test it. I test it thoroughly. I use a lot of distribution. I test out a lot of distributions. I play around with a lot of systems, a lot of installation, a lot of just testing out stuff. I love Linux. If I hate it, I hate it. I'm not gonna focus on it anymore. I'll just ignore it. And that's what I do when I don't like something. I really won't think about it anymore. If I'm complaining about Linux because I really care about it, okay. So don't take this video at me hating Linux because that is far from the truth. I'm probably a person that really cares about Linux a lot, but if I don't point out its flaws, it'll never have any improvements. If people don't say the flaws, how things get fixed or improved, if people think Linux is just perfect, because it's very, very, very far from being perfect. It needs a lot of improvement, but I'm gonna stick with Mac OS. I'm also gonna stick with Windows. These are my systems. I'm done with Linux. Anyways, guys, I hope you have a good one, and I hope you don't hate this video as much as my other ones, because I get a lot of negative feedback. But you know what? Feedback is feedback, and I appreciate all of it. And I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching my videos. Until next time, guys, I don't know what my next video is, but we'll see what happens. Have a good one. Cheers.